There you go. Okay. Great. Right.
Hi, welcome everyone to our side event on action on black carbon to secure fast climate mitigation and hope for the cryosphere. My name is Holly Han, and I'm an early career research scientist through ICCI, and we're really happy to welcome you at the ICCI side venue today. So this session or side event will launch a new policy brief on black carbon and discuss existing barriers and presenting a new philanthropic-funded initiative. And so I'm very happy to introduce Dr. Subramanian Ramachandran from STEP, Center for Study of Science, Technology, and Policy. And Subu is also a sector head of air quality.
Thank you. Thank you for that introduction. And thank you all for coming here. We have a full house. I'm very happy with that. This shows the importance of black carbon, both in terms of air pollution as well as climate change. We're going to kick things off with a short video that basically highlights the importance of black carbon. Great, thanks. So the policy brief is obviously called the case for action in black carbon, because that's what we do. We want to reduce black carbon emissions to avoid climate different points, build a resilience to climate change, and develop clean energy solutions. It has many different impacts. You have regional climate impacts. For example, black carbon in snow and ice contributes to 39% of total glacier melting and 10% of glacier mass loss. In the Tibetan Plateau, It also pushes us closer towards critical climate tipping points in the Arctic, the Himalayan glaciers, the Andes, and other parts of the cryosphere. Uh, it's also a critical component, an important component of pollution, PM2.5, which is estimated to cause about 7 million premature mortalities each year. And black carbon and associated organic carbon and other emissions from combustion sources do contribute a significant component of those millions of lives lost each year. And finally, there's also effects on monsoons, where you have more uncertain monsoons as well as more peak flooding, which obviously causes a lot of damage to infrastructure and economic outcomes as well. The this slide basically just shows the really widespread impacts of black carbon, ranging from the Arctic, obviously, but there's a lot of emissions from shipping emissions, which use heavy fuel oil. There's also diesel generators for communities near the Arctic, because we don't have electricity supply. There are lines running all the way there, and they need power. And so they run diesel generators. We'll talk about that in a minute. There's also forest fire emissions from West Africa, for example, which disrupt the monsoon over there. The same thing is seen in Asia, India, and China. There is obviously black carbon deposition on the Andes and the Arctic, on the Andes and the Himalayan glaciers, which causes a lot of glacier loss much more rapidly than without black carbon emissions. And so really, that is not a single part of the globe that escapes the impact of black carbon emissions. And so, but there are solutions. And I think the good news is that there are demonstrated projects that show that black carbon emissions can be reduced using commercially available technology. You don't need to wait for some technology to be developed in over 10 or 15 years. You can do it right now. The first one obviously is fantastic. It's Lighting Africa, which is now called Lighting Global, an initiative supported by the World Bank. Since about 15 years, they've deployed about 20 million solar lanterns and home systems across Africa, which is displacing a lot of kerosene, which was previously used. So in the absence of electricity, people were using kerosene to light their homes, and kerosene emissions are largely almost entirely black carbon. That's a lot of indoor air pollution as well. And it is estimated that we have the Lighting Global has displaced 41 million liters of kerosene every year, which is over 3,000 metric tons of black carbon being avoided annually. The second case study that we have in the report, as an example, is a community in the Arctic, near the Arctic, which was previously relying on diesel generators. And with support from the Canadian government and ATCO Electric Yukon, this has basically, they've put solar panels over there, which is a community of I think just 250 people, but due to the need for heat and power, they were consuming about a lot of diesel annually. And so with the help of solar panels, we are avoiding 190,000 liters of diesel, which is the equivalent of moving 140,000 liters. And that avoids about 40 kg of black carbon each year. Now you might think 40 kg is not a big deal, but there are several such communities in the Arctic and along the Siberia, and any of these communities will be Arctic. And so you can provide power for them that is non-fossil, which is what you do. The third example that we have is brick kilns. Now brick kilns, so about 87% of brick production happens in Asia, about 60% in China and 27% in South Asia, India, Pakistan, Nepal, and Bangladesh. ECMOD was instrumental in implementing a switch to zigzag kilns in Nepal. They also done this in Pakistan. There are other measures that have led to the deployment of more efficient zigzag kilns, less polluting, more efficient zigzag kilns in Bangladesh. When they are properly operated, you have proper worker retraining, you can reduce black carbon emissions by 60% and CO2 by 12%. And this is, of course, a transition to ideally using electric kilns, but it at least reduces black carbon emissions, which can also be a significant contributor to air pollution in Bangladesh, for example, which is a heavily populated country, as well as in Nepal. So it has impacts for both health as well as for climate. And the fourth case study that we have several examples. We just highlighted four in the policy brief, is community-led forest fire management. And in West Africa, what happened was that a lot of fires were started by people, whether it's for agricultural land clearing or other purposes. And but there were efforts to reduce the forest fires. But until this effort took place, basically to involve the community and have them lead the way to reduce fires, that significantly reduced the amount of wildfire which is 78%, which is a huge deal. And that can avoid emitting about 6,000 tons per year of black carbon. And a similar effort can be done in other parts of the world. Forest fires are everywhere. Forest fires in Australia, forest fires in India and around Himalayas. And basically, by getting the community involved, if you can avoid forest fire emissions, particularly in, say, near the Himalayas, where you have black carbon and other polluted emissions from forest fires that deposit into the Himalayas. And because black carbon is so effective at melting snow and ice, it leads to faster glacier melt. So you can avoid those emissions and avoid melting the glaciers faster than you normally would. And so we have several recommendations for different stakeholders. So whether you're in government, for example, you want to look at policy making and regulation, and you could include black carbon in your nationally determined contributions, which triggers a whole host of other measures and activities that flow from there. And you can also look at implementing regulations like emission standards, improving them to say BS6 or BS7, Euro 6 or Euro 7, for example. You can also encourage more community-led forest fire management efforts, and also more black carbon-free residential biofuels. So look at ways to do that. And all of this obviously often requires funding. And so for donor countries, for example, they can look at how they can support these efforts in other countries. Multilateral development banks, obviously they should start. They are funding deep decarbonization efforts, but one way for them to look at it is prioritize deep decarbonization efforts that target black carbon-rich sources of carbon dioxide. And so you can have a double win for the climate through that, as well as a win for pollution. And finally, philanthropies can fill in this critical gap where whether it's not the multilateral development banks or donor countries or government efforts may not be funding it, but the philanthropies can actually fill in that critical data gap, support non-governmental organizations, for example, create awareness campaigns, support these community-led forest fire management. Finally, there's still a good bit of scientific uncertainty around black carbon, which is why action on black carbon hasn't really taken place in the climate space. And so but we know a lot, enough now to actually act on it while these uncertainties are being narrowed down. And so, there's a lot of different things that we could do, but we hope that with the launch of this policy brief, we are able to actually kickstart that conversation and actually move towards action really rapidly. And so, with that, I'm going to, we have 5 excellent panelists here, plus the airbag which is sitting outside. But oh man, you don't see what's right in front of you. That's a perfect example of that, right? So 6 panelists here, and the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves and talk about what their interest is in black carbon. So I'm going to start with Jane, who is the founder and CEO of the Clean Air Fund. Jane,
Do I need a mic for the?
Oh, sorry, yes, mic. This one, okay.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm Jane Burst, and I founded and run the Clean Air Fund, which is an international philanthropic foundation working on clean air for all. And when we set up about 5 years ago, our goal has always been to promote both a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions that happen at the same time as air pollution and the health benefits that come from reducing air pollution. And so we've been working on black carbon in a sense since then. Particulate matter is one of the main health harming air pollutants that we've been working to reduce. And we've done so by supporting different country national governments and city governments to either introduce new legislation or enforce existing legislation and plans or introduce new policies. So some examples of the kinds of things that we've supported is in particular states in Poland, domestic coal burning bans, and the rollout of heat pumps and energy efficiency to replace those domestic coal boilers. And in other cities, we've supported the administrations to introduce clean air zones. And that always involves work with academic organisations and think tanks to, for example, with the clean air zones, figure out what the scope of it should be, which vehicles to let in, how much to charge, with civil society organisations to help advocate for those solutions and for the health benefit of them, and with governments who are going to implement. So we've been, in a sense, working on black carbon in a roundabout way since we set up. The reason that we've now started to work on black carbon very specifically in some of the ways that Subu mentioned is because we see what's happened on methane over the last 5 or so years, where an area of work on greenhouse gas mitigation and short-lived climate pollutant mitigation has really come to the fore through an acceleration in understanding about global warming potential and what difference it makes to reduce these short-term climate pollutants now, and the need to do that alongside carbon dioxide emissions reductions in the long term. So people have kind of got their heads around the marathon of carbon dioxide emissions reduction and the sprint of short-lived climate pollutant reduction with regards to methane. Not yet with black carbon. It's something that I remember reading about a decade ago. Black carbon emissions reduction was like the big thing that everybody was going to do next to help mitigate climate change, and then nothing happened. And so what we're planning to fund over the next few years includes the science to help reduce the uncertainties, which, as Subu said, have kind of caused this doom cycle of there's uncertainties, and so there's no funding because there's uncertainties, so then there's no funding to reduce the uncertainties, and black carbon gets kind of stuck out on a limb for a long time. So we're funding that, and then some work around comms and other areas that have been highlighted.
Great. Divakar? And Divakar is a 20-year-old climate justice activist from Nepal.
Hello, namaste everyone. I am from Nepal. My name is Divakar Preti, and I am a Red Alert Generation Hope campaign activist of the State Student, and I have my own organization named Cryosphere. So, talking about me, my interest in climate change, it was just like a couple of years ago when I went to the capital city of Nepal, Kathmandu, for my higher education. I saw the mountains were getting black and black. I was seeing rocks and the mountains instead of the white and bright snow. So I think that is a real tuning of that. Every young people and every children needs to raise voice for their future. So it was the time when I have started my journey towards the climate justice campaign and action to get more to make the government more accountable towards the climate justice, towards to do the climate crisis issues, so that the government needs to implement those all policies which it has concerned with the UN or UNFCCC or IPCC, or in terms of human rights, in terms of the constitution also, when there is a right that every human being has the right to live in healthy environment, then why not government is implementing those fundamental rights? So we have started likewise in the campaign, and which is in front of you also, the earbud, which shows the air pollution of the Kathmandu and overall the Nepal. We have linked the air pollution, climate action, climate issues with the broader with the voices of the children and young people to hand over the government to take actions. So it's a journey started, and yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Jenny Megar-Sanchez, who is the head of the climate change division in the Department of Environment and Conservation. Administrative.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. Yes. Well, as an engineer, my background was related with air quality at the first, and then I moved to climate change. So I understand well what is happening in the atmosphere. But from the position of climate change as well, we can see that there is a special point to mention related with snow, right? Cryosphere and snow and the mountains are in very huge danger with black carbon emissions. So now we have the problem in health that we already know from the side of air pollution, but now also we are trying to mix the policies to help also biodiversity and our natural resources. So is black carbon is more than just climate change policy or more than air quality policy, since there are so many co-benefits to work on this. So in Chile, we have a climate change law. Before that, we had some policies related with in particular matter. I mean, we have the contamination plants in cities which are very polluted by particulate matter. However, now with the climate change law, we have this opportunity to enhance these the contamination plants and put these measures into the mitigation plans as well, and also in the part of adaptation plans, especially for Cryosphere.
Thank you. Over to Gary Kleiman, the founder and principal of Harvest Air, and co-author of this report.
Thanks, Luke, and I want to thank Jane and the Clean Air Fund for raising the importance of this issue. My introduction of black carbon was also about 10 years ago. I've been working with the World Bank, and at the behest of the G8, we were asked to do a portfolio review to look at the lending that the World Bank is making across its entire portfolio in collaboration with national governments to try and understand, of all of the development projects that we were making in various sectors, what was the impact on emissions of these short-lived climate pollutants, including black carbon, but also methane and short-lived HFCs. And it was really eye-opening because what we found is that, whether we were investing or in financing national governments who were investing in integrated solid waste management or public transit systems, climate smart agriculture, at that time, upstream oil and gas, the World Bank no longer finances that way. All of these investments we were making across the sectors, they were having a direct impact on black carbon emissions. That was 10 years ago. So I think it was eye-opening for me, senior management, even the G8. I think they were aware, and as Jane pointed out, there's been a whole lot of action. You're going to hear some major announcements from the World Bank this week on methane. The Gale amendments have addressed short-lived HFCs. And while the bank has done a great job of integrating air quality and climate mitigation, I would have to acknowledge, I think there has been a missed opportunity, not just by the bank, by governments around the world.
Thank you. Our final finalist is Anurita Rajal. She's the Executive Director of Research and Advocacy at the Center for Science and Environment.
Thank you. For me, fighting air pollution battle now has been such a long journey for me and for us in CSU. I with more than decades old now. And it has been a fascinating journey, and I come to this conversation as a civil society actor concerned about the air quality improvement, the health impact it has. And you can imagine, therefore, fighting a battle like that. What this means, how do you source the right information, science, data, to have that as an ammunition, as a bullet to fire public imagination, public opinion, and bring policy change. So it has always been that. And then it's so interesting that a battle that started by fighting particulate pollution, everyone we are trying to build the policy and the public conversation around that. And suddenly about a decade ago, the term black carbon emerged. Okay? And then we had to really make an effort to understand that what is this new science all about? Is it only talking about particulate matter enough that has impact on public health? then known when we were told, no, you really need to look at this particular fraction. It also has climate implications. And you therefore need to talk about who benefits and who control. And that really opened up the channel for us, that to bring new nuanced approach to our advocacy. And I tell you that story today, that how that has helped us to fight and win some battles in India.
Thank you. So, first question I have is back to Jane. And again, as Gary mentioned, thank you for the support for developing this policy brief. The question is now you're launching this, the Clean Air Fund is launching the policy brief at COP. What do you expect is going to happen, or what do you want to see? How are you going to change the narrative from nobody acting on black carbon really, well, except for exceptions like Chile, for example. But what do you expect to see from as outcomes or positive outcomes from this policy?
So what I hope the brief will do is focus more attention on the issue. Like you say, there are a very, very small handful of countries that already have black carbon targets and actions in their NDC. And what we would like to see more of is that targets and plans to reduce that are additional to the carbon dioxide or the greenhouse gas emissions plans that exist. Because we think that it can trigger additional ambition, not just for the climatic, not just for temperature rises, but for the regional climatic events that we've been, and impacts that we've been hearing about around deposition on snow and ice and the acceleration of melting that's causing huge issues for water security, food security, energy security, and would increase local resilience against things like flooding. And it would also bring these huge health benefits, which we see when we're working on air pollution reduction and climate change at the same time, also help people to get on board with those actions. Oftentimes, depending on the political persuasion of individuals or political parties, there's more or less interest in tackling climate change. Oftentimes, air quality is something that many different political parties want to tackle because of the health benefits, because of how understandable it is and how immediate and tangible it is for the general public. So being able to promote the health benefits of climate action is something that we all also see as a benefit of inclusion in NDCs. We don't think it's super easy. I think one of the things that maybe has held countries back from including black carbon in their NDC, and I would love to hear from Jenny what was the trigger for Chile including it, and what conversations you had to try and, if you had to do any persuasion, to try and persuade those in government with you to do that. But what we see as a difficulty is the lack of ability to translate black carbon reductions into the normal climate metrics. So you can't make it a carbon dioxide equivalent, so you can't get the same kind of credit for the actions. And I don't mean carbon credit, I mean like kudos for the actions that you can for other things. And so why would you ask for more reductions and more targets when you can't assess the benefit of that or account for the benefit of that climate system?
That's a perfect segue over to Jenny. And we'd like to hear about how Chile included black carbon in its NDC. There's a target of reducing black carbon by 25% by 2030. And what does that mean in terms of measuring what is the current emission inventory, for example, and how to track progress towards what would other countries learn from Chile's experience?
Thank you very much. Yes, actually, when we were working on the NDC, the updated NDC for 2020, we noticed that we had already a policy related with a particular matter, but this policy called the Strategy for Decarbonization Plan wasn't enough strong to be like a pillar for black carbon. So in that sense, we realized that putting a specific target into the NDC could help not only the climate target, but also the air pollution objective. So in that sense, we started to working in constructing data. I mean, at that time we only had emissions inventory for like a particular matter. So we started to work on an inventory for black carbon, and that inventory has the same structure of the IPCC inventories for GHG. So it's easier to work on that sense because we had already a system to gather data for our GHG inventory, with in a cycle of 2 years. So the idea of having updated black carbon inventory also helps for the development of policies. And with that, we integrate the black carbon information into our projections, and we set this target for 2030. However, we started to have some problems, of course, because there is another way to work with black carbon. As I mentioned before, we have this decontamination plans, and with that we have standard for air quality and stuff. So we had to start to enhance the information related with mitigation actions and the links with GHG and black carbon for some mitigation actions, especially in the transport sector, especially in the mining, especially also in wood fuel facilities in the south of Chile. So with that, we started to put the contamination plant into the mitigation plans, which have less bureaucracy in my country because we have the climate change law, there's a new law, so it's thought to be a rapid policy standard. So we started to raise the importance of some of the measures that we wanted to see results, especially in transport with electromobility, and especially with the wood in the south of Chile. So we are now tracking all those in our report in the BURs. We already presented the 5th BUR last year, and in 2004 we will present the first PTR with more information related.
Thank you for that. My next question is to Anuvita. And basically, so you're based in Delhi, and you're breathing Delhi air pollution all the time. But Delhi made a huge push to replace diesel buses with CNG several years ago. So has that been successful? And what can other cities, but I don't see that happening in many other cities of India. So, or even other countries. So what are the lessons that we can learn from that experience, and how can we encourage more mass adoption of, say, CNG or electric buses and transportation?
Clearly, and you're absolutely right. So this whole fight to get diesel off the road and replace it with CNG, that was essentially a part of the whole campaign and policy action that we initiated to basically get rid of diesel emissions. And it's just CNG is not the only step taken in Delhi, but that was a very big step. For one city to say that the entire public transport, local commercial transport, public transit, need to move out of diesel and run only on natural gas, and that to more than 2 decades ago. That was certainly a very big action that has not been prevalent anywhere else in our country also. So that was the first step towards to get rid of diesel. But since then, series of other measures have also been taken to control diesel. So which is that we have got rid of more than 10-year-old diesel vehicles. You cannot fly more than 10-year diesel vehicles, both commercial and personal in Delhi. There is a restriction on trucks. There's an extra pollution charge that you need to pay per liter of diesel sold in Delhi, and also on purchase of big diesel cars and SUVs, right? Now you may ask, okay, all of these have happened, CNG and all of this together, has it helped? So very recently, when we looked at the data, it's quite fascinating to see that because of this, a continuous market signal going, saying that diesel is bad, don't use diesel. Today in Delhi, between 2014 and 2022, we have seen reduction in transport diesel consumption by 46%. That's not a small amount, right? And also, diesel car share in the new car sales in 2015 was about 35%, which is now down to 7.2%. Okay, so clearly now we never try to understand the linear action, but how that contributes towards the energy transition as well. And this is actually part of the energy transition. And in that, today we are talking about how our next move needs to happen towards electric mobility. That it is CNG is not good enough, right? But the point that I want to highlight in this context is that how black carbon science also helped us to fight a battle. That is very important. Because initially, the whole battle started with public health science. When we source information to say that okay, deposition is a carcinogen, then the California Resources Board said that this is the toxic air contaminant. So all that science was sourced to tell the government, to the Supreme Court, that diesel is bad for public health and we have to discourage that and we need clean diesel, which has also now taken us, and that's a very big leap forward. India is now the only vehicle producing country in the world that has leapfrogged directly from Euro 4 to Euro 6, skipping Euro 5 altogether, and done that in 3 years, right? So clearly you can understand how big this has been. But why the black carbon science helped us? It's very interesting when we were in this battle, the big disinformation and the misinformation and the way the legal industry was also then doing the counter-information and misguiding on to say that diesel makes climate sense. Okay? Because diesel vehicles are more fuel efficient, you burn less fuel per kilometer compared to a gasoline car, and therefore it's a solution to climate change. Okay? And it influenced everyone, the policymakers, they were all buying that argument. And we were like, the data would show you that, yes, a diesel car is more fuel efficient than a gasoline car. How to find that? And then I'm so glad, Michael Walsh is in the room now, that in 2010, when you was part of Ranchi City, you organized a very big black carbon conference. So you got all the big scientists in the world to come together and understand what is the science all about. That has really given us that exposure to the science. And then we started integrating it, saying that, well, CO2 less, maybe not that, but the black carbon and the warming impact that it has, how that negates. And it's interesting to see that some studies came out from British Columbia and etc. that showed that because we were displacing very dirty diesel, and therefore we were displacing Euro 0, Euro 1 diesel, and as a result, the CNG fleet, when it in fact replaced diesel, so because then the other argument had also come up that the CNG is also leading to more methane emissions. Okay, so you don't get climate sense there as well. So what they calculated to show that while the introduction of CNG may have increased the share of the bus fleet because of the methane emissions. So if you take into account the black carbon that you have replaced because of the diesel one, then the warming potential is actually, and the gain that we have made is much higher from CNG compared to diesel. But this is all part of the conversation to kind of build the argument, just to say that how science has to come in to drive policy advocacy. So now today, when we have reached Euro 6, it's no longer about CNG anymore. Now we are saying that you just now need to move out of into the combustion engine, and therefore the electric mobility that now needs to be scaled up. So the good thing is that the government of India's program on electric buses is really quite transforming. And what all the numbers are showing that all the programs and the funding available for electric buses today in India, if that gets implemented in the next 3 years, then by 2030, India could have the second largest electric bus fleet in the world. Right? That's the kind of ambition we have. So looking at it, and the final point that I just want to make is that as you said, we can always learn from it. That yes, India can certainly do, but it's a global south, and we're really worried about, particularly about the vehicle importing countries, because today when Europe and America are saying we want to phase out diesel cars, if that all gets dumped in African markets and Asian markets, then we're in a big trouble. So we really have to look for solutions.
Thank you so much. That's fantastic. I'm going to go over to the we just come all the way from Nepal carrying airware. And of course, I think the key, the point you're trying to make, especially with the focus on the cryosphere, on the glaciers, on the Arctic, is that there is a lot of black carbon deposition on these white surfaces that then leads to an increase in more rapid melting, which pushes us close to really dangerous tipping points. I mean, this bed I think was originally white, and so tell us the story of how it came to be here.
Okay. The story starts with like that. When I already also told that I was in Kathmandu and I got the opportunity to be a part of SIFT campaign. And SIFT was the climate action campaign. It was a support fund for the young people from the SIFT children. So in terms of that, we got opportunity to have a SIFT project. And while we were working on the SIFT project, we came to know about the air bear that Myanmar young people were delivering the message to their local people that how the Myanmar is hit by the air pollution. In the same way, the Myanmar got the coup, and after that, their campaign was stopped. But we thought that this will be the one of the best way to deliver the message and to make government more accountable and responsible by showing the mascot as a air pollution, that how the air pollution is being happening in Kathmandu or overall the Nepal. So we have taken the idea from the Myanmar young people of this area, and we have established this area as a mascot in Kathmandu and named this area as Sathi. The Sathi indicates a friend. So it's friend of our, it's friends of government, everyone, and it is telling the message that how air pollution is being polluted every day in Kathmandu, every day in Nepal. When Air Bear was ready, the Sathi moved to the Kathmandu cities with eco vehicle, and yeah, Air Bear also cycled with the young people and moved towards the different heritage side of Kathmandu and messaged the people that air pollution is very much dangerous for us, and how the air pollution is not that much visible for the people, that they are not seeing the air pollution, the PM 2.5. They do not know about this all the technical terms. So it was very challenging for us to make them know about the air pollution. So this was first very snowy, brighter white, but gradually when it starts to walk to the Kathmandu city and the Sudur Pashchim province, which is the Mahakali, near the Mahakali river, there it also went to the Madhesh, which is south of the India border, and it also it moves towards the Nepal. It meets with the children, young people, and after that it came back to the that Kathmandu, and people usually call it as a Sati, and we usually show the message from this year where the how Nepal is getting polluted every day and how black carbon over the atmosphere is also impacting that Himalayan range. So we are connecting those dots with this year here as a mascot, and this story starts and ends here.
Great, thank you so much. I mean, go ahead. The Gary. Okay, so I think you were saying over to Gary. So we got a few more minutes left, and then we switch over to audience Q&A. But Gary, as a co-author of this report, what is the I mean, you heard really good stories from Jenny as well as from Anumita about the push for change, as well as awareness raising from the author. What are the key messages do you think that people should take away, whether it's funding agencies or multilateral development banks or climate activists in general? What do you think are the messages that we should take away?
Yeah, I think that it would be easy to read this report, the case for action, and think the message is that, oh, well, by attacking black carbon and reducing those emissions, we can simultaneously deliver development and deliver clean air. And I think that that's missing the point, because yes, that's true, but we've known that for 10 years. So the real message of this report is that we need to be a little bit more strategic. We need to be a little bit smarter and more creative in designing our decarbonization paths. Yes, we need to decarbonize, but if we focus first on black carbon, And yes, we also need to think about avoiding lock-in for long-term infrastructure that will significantly increase CO2. Yes, we also need to think, as a lot of air quality programs are doing now, think about cost effectiveness. How do we stretch every dollar to get the maximum amount of PM2.5? But we also need to be thinking about focus first on black. And if we do that, we can do that. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. And this report says that if we focus on these key sectors where there's a lot of black carbon, we know we're going to be successful in delivering immediate climate cooling, which is really important. But also, we eliminate the co-emitted CO2 that comes with those sources. We provide the health benefits, reduce PM, provide greater resilience benefits, with regular precipitation and water security. So I think that that's really the key message: is thoughtful design of clean air and climate.
Thanks so much. And I think this is thanks. And I think the one point that I think Gary mentioned that I do want to emphasize is that black carbon emissions have an almost immediate effect. So black carbon has a lifetime in the atmosphere, which is 1 to 2 weeks. And so if you stop black carbon emissions now, those effects of cleaner air and less black carbon melting the Arctic ice or melting the Himalayas glaciers will be felt basically 2 weeks from now. There's less black carbon stuff depositing on it. Because at the end of the day, black carbon is being emitted, whether it's from diesel engines, whether it is from wood fires, or whether it is from brick kilns, or whatever else, whether it's in labs. And number one, people breathe it really close to themselves. So that's an immediate action we should try to stop those emissions. That people see that. Number two, it just has a lifetime of 1 to 2 weeks. Carbon dioxide has a lifetime of 100 years. So if you stop black carbon emissions now, you're going to basically see reduced deposition of black carbon on these critical transfer different points in just 1 to 2 weeks. And that can actually reduce that harmful, faster melting that we precipitate. And so it's really important that we can prioritize deep decarbonization that also is targeted at black carbon rich sources, black carbon rich sources. We have just about a couple of, and I'll just switch over to audience questions in case people have any questions. We have quite a large audience here in the room. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. Is there a question for Chile about the?
Just 1 second. Let's we speak into this so the online audience can hear.
Thank you. This is the question for Chile. You mentioned the biomass combustion in the southern part of Chile. Is that for residential purposes or okay? And what has been the response of the communities that burn biomass? The reason I asked, we actually have a project on monitoring black carbon, and when you go to communities to deal with that issue, the response varies, but that's a sort of energy, is cultural attachment to it as well. So dealing with that reality is challenging. So I want to know how you have dealt with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. It's a very hard situation with the communities because, as you mentioned, there is a strong custom of use wood for not only for heating, also for cooking. So it's difficult to change their minds and communicate the problem with good service. So from the point of health, we are trying to work together with the subnational government in order to have more information for people, and also with the Ministry of Housing. We are trying to have a space and a program to help people, especially more vulnerable people, to change the condition of their houses. Because you can change the wood stove, but if the house has this is not well isolated is the same problem, right? And so the idea is having this the change of the soul with a program helping for vulnerable people, but also helping them to improve their houses, and also with communication and education. I think that is key because, as you mentioned, they are really used to it, but when they see and they understand what are the problem with that smoke in particular, they take some actions.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Practice, and this is fascinating. I can't believe I came all the way by to see a neighbor of mine. But this also talks about how global these issues are. And one of the things that strikes me is that there are so few things that you could do in climate change and in our spaces that have a very immediate impact. And I'm just wondering if that can't be more of the campaign, and it probably is, but how do we elevate the actions and the people taking those actions as superpowers? Because they really are taking actions right now, or could be taking actions that would be immediate and could be showcased. I can't do that in fusion energy. It's not the same discussion. It will become part of the solution for those who are not burning biomass. But that's a long way off.
I love that question. Is there any particular person you want to respond to that?
I would ask
Okay.
anybody.
Yeah, but Jerry. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, I completely agree. The urgency and the immediacy are things that are really not talked about a lot. And I think one of the issues with black carbon as a movement is that the narrative isn't completely clear and shared. I think communication and being able to either relate it to metrics that people are aware of, or to come up with a new one that people understand in terms that they understand. You know, we've all got our brains into temperature rise and carbon dioxide equivalent and global warming potential over an arbitrary selected period of 100 years. And so it's, you know, it just confuses people to start talking about this and regional impacts and how much more warming it creates in the Himalayas and the Arctic than it does elsewhere. People are just confused by differential warming factors. So having a simple, clear narrative that we all share, I think, is one of the things that this movement needs to work on together over the coming few years. On your point about kind of policies and showcasing what's already happening and the people who are doing it, I think one of the things as well that's holding policymakers back is concerns about co-emissions, or confusion about what to prioritize based on the co-emissions. But carbon is never emitted on its own. People are worried about emissions with organic carbon, which is cooling. They're also asking what could we do that would have the biggest impact across everything that's emitted. So being able to get some sense of what the hierarchy of policy implementation is for the different things that are emitted alongside, I think, is something else that we as a community, there's probably a lot of different bits of research that we can pull together, and maybe more that needs to be done to make those solutions and the hierarchy in which we do them clearer. And then the final thing I think is to kind of bring the movement together in one or more different coalitions. I had a question for Jenny, if I can sneak in another one, about whether there's a group of countries that are working on black carbon. Because I know a little while ago there was only 4 countries that had black carbon NDCs. I saw the CCACs just mentioned that there's now 17. Do you ever speak to one another? Is there a kind of group of champion countries that could push the stuff that we need at the COP? And then for other groups, I know Anita was pointing out, person at the back, I don't know who's organised a conference on black carbon a long while ago. Is there, what does the movement need by way of convening meeting, who's already meeting and who needs to. It would be great to hear that from all of you.
Okay, thank you. Well, yeah, we speak with a friend, and actually we have a good partner in the region, like Colombia, for example. And we are, it's funny because now we are talking what are the importance of this kind of policy into the main discussion here in the negotiation. This is a personal opinion. I'm not representing my partners. But we have heard a lot the word unabated in the negotiations since a few negotiations in the past, and I think we have lost this point of health related with emissions other than CO2 in that conversation, and that is a huge important thing that we need to put in on today. I mean, we cannot go with word like unabated fossil fuel if you are not talking about what are the pollutants that you are unabated. I mean, it is super important to have this in mind when we are talking in this general discussion related with the future of energy, especially. And that is a position that we are talking with other countries, and it's especially important for us. And there is a lot of an initiative and a group of countries that are working in the same issues and the same matter. We have the Greenland pledge as well. Now in this COP, we have another pledge for Greenland called Love, yeah, for food waste and waste emissions of Greenland. But there's a lot of initiatives to work together.
Thank you so much. Yeah, sure. Short question.
So I have a short question. I think last year when I was working on the carbon cases for the end of budget, I quickly realized that the carbon is really expensive to measure. So I'm wondering how can we democratize the carbon technologies?
Okay.
Well, for PM 2.5, the community has done a great job democratizing monitoring technologies, low-cost sensors that come way down in price. Black carbon is a little bit trickier because it is just one small component of PM 2.5. There are black carbon sensors, and I think that the approach we probably want to take is limited monitoring of black carbon in parallel with black carbon, with PM 2.5 low-cost sensors. Because if we have a dense network of low-cost PM 2.5 sensors that give you a good understanding of where the PM 2.5 is, probably on a more limited basis, you can determine what fraction of the PM in various parts of the city or various parts of the country are black carbon, and that may be enough to be on.
I think and thank you all for those questions. That was fantastic. With that, thank you so much for your for the conversation, and I think that really highlights the importance of action with black carbon. Of course, measurement of black carbon is important. That's what I've been doing for a long time as well. But I think clearly there's enough evidence to push for action with black carbon. The technologies are available now, and more than ever, we need to act. With that, I'd like to ask our panelists to quickly hold up the report, and then we can just have a couple of photographs to officially launch it. It is just the cover of the report. You can find the actual report on PDF, more sustainable PDFs by scanning the QR code down there. And we have card, that's a business card with the QR code. So thank you once again. And let's have a round of applause. For